You know, it's rather fascinating when you stop and look at it. Here we are, billions of us spinning around on this blue marble in space, each carrying within us the same ache, the same hunger. We dress it up differently, of course. Some call it loneliness, others call it purpose, some chase it through achievements, others through possessions. But strip away all the costumes, all the clever disguises, and what remains? The desire to love and be loved. It's the most fundamental thing about being human. More basic than hunger, more persistent than the need for shelter, because you can fill your belly. You can find a roof over your head and still feel utterly empty. Still feel like you're wandering through life as a ghost, unseen, untouched, unknown. And here's where it gets interesting. We have made such a terrible mess of it. We've turned the simplest, most natural thing in the world into something complicated, something transactional, something that causes more pain than perhaps anything else in human experience. Why? Because we've confused the appearance of love with love itself. We've mistaken the bargain for the real thing. Now let me ask you something. When did you first learn that love had conditions? Think about it, go back. Perhaps you were a child and you noticed that affection flowed more freely when you were good, when you cleaned your room, when you brought home the right marks from school. Perhaps you learned that smiles came easier when you made yourself useful, when you didn't make too much noise, when you fit into the shape others wanted you to take. Or perhaps it was later in those early days of romance when you discovered that to keep someone's attention, you had to perform. You had to be interesting enough, attractive enough, successful enough, and somewhere in those moments, a seed was planted. The seed that said love is something you earn, something you deserve only when you meet their requirements. But here's the trouble with that seed. Once it takes root, it grows into a whole garden of misunderstanding. And by the time you're 30 or 40, with the time you've lived enough to see behind the curtain, you begin to realize what a strange game you've been playing. You've been trading pieces of yourself for scraps of affection. You've been performing in a theater where the audience is never quite satisfied, and the exhaustion of it all. Let me tell you what happens when you build love on conditions. You create what looks like love. Sounds like love, might even feel like love for a time, but underneath it's something else entirely. It's a bargain, an arrangement. You give me what I need and I'll give you what you need. You be this for me and I'll be that for you. And for a while, perhaps even for years, the bargain holds. The accounts balance. Each person delivers what was promised. And so the structure stands. But here's what nobody tells you about bargains. They're fragile. They depend entirely on both parties continuing to meet the terms. And life being what it is has a way of making that impossible. You age, you change, your circumstances shift. The person you were when you made the deal is not the person you are now, and the same is true for the other. The whole thing is built on sand, you see, because it assumes that human beings can be fixed, predictable, reliable in the way that a contract requires. But we're not machines. We're rivers. We're weather. We're constantly moving, constantly becoming something other than what we were. So what happens when the terms can no longer be met? When you can no longer provide what was expected? Maybe you lose your job and suddenly the security you offered is gone. Maybe illness comes and the strength or beauty that first attracted them fades. Maybe you simply grow tired of being someone you're not. And in that moment the mask drops. The warmth that you thought was love reveals itself as something else. Obligation, perhaps habit, or worse, nothing at all. Just a blank stare where tenderness used to be. I've seen it countless times. A man or woman who has given decades to someone who has been faithful, devoted, present, only to wake up one day and realize they were never truly seen. They were useful, they were necessary, but were they loved? Not in the way the soul requires, not in the way that nourishes, and the pain of that recognition. It's like discovering you've been speaking to an empty room all along. You thought someone was listening, but there was only an echo. This is the nature of conditional love. It is not cruel by design. Most people don't set out to hurt one another. But when love is built on what you do rather than who you are, it cannot help but disappoint. Because what you do will change. What you provide will eventually run out. And if that's all you are valued for, then when it's gone, so is the love. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not saying that relationships shouldn't involve giving. Of course, they should. Love naturally expresses itself through care, through service, through attention to another's needs. But there's a world of difference between giving that flows from fullness and giving that comes from fear. One is the overflow of a heart that cannot help itself. The other is the desperate attempt to secure affection, to keep someone from leaving, to prove your worth. You can feel the difference, can't you? When someone gives to you from fullness, there's a lightness to it, a joy. They're not keeping score, or they're not waiting for you to reciprocate in equal measure. They give because giving is its own reward, because the act itself brings them pleasure. But when someone gives from emptiness, from need, there's a weight to it, a burden. You can sense the invisible strings attached, the unspoken expectation that you owe them something in return. And that's not love. That's a transaction dressed up in affection's clothing. The tragedy is that most of us have been trained from childhood to engage in these transactions. We learned dearly that love was something to be earned, that affection was the reward for good behavior. And so we spend our lives trying to be good enough, trying to meet the conditions, trying to secure the love we crave. But it never quite works, does it? Because even when we meet the conditions, even when we do everything right, there's still that knowing sense that we're not truly known. That if the mask ever slipped, if they saw who we really are beneath all the performance, they would turn away. And so we become prisoners of our own making. We trap ourselves in relationships where we cannot be honest, cannot be vulnerable, cannot rest. We must always be on, always performing, always maintaining the illusion that we're the person they agreed to love. And the exhaustion of it year after year, decade after decade, it drains the life right out of you. You become a hollow thing, going through the motions, wondering why something that was supposed to bring joy has become such a burden. Let me tell you something about real love. The kind that doesn't rot into resentment. It's not a bargain. It's not a contract. It's not, I'll give you this if you give me that. Real love is freedom. It's the freedom to be exactly who you are, without pretense, without performance. It's being seen, truly seen in all your messiness and imperfection, and still being cherished. Not because you've earned it, but simply because you exist. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. You cannot receive this kind of love until you've learned to give it to yourself. This is the great secret that nobody wants to hear. We all want to believe that the right person will come along and fill the emptiness inside us, that their love will heal our wounds, prove our worth, make us whole. But it doesn't work that way. It can't work that way. Egos, a heart that is starving for love, will always in some hidden corner turn even its most generous gestures into transactions. It will give, yes, but it will be. Watching, measuring, waiting for their turn. Think about it. When you're desperate to be loved, every act of kindness you offer carries a silent plea. Love me back. See me, choose me. And the other person, even if they don't consciously realize it, feels that weight. They feel the expectation, the need, the demand. And it creates a pressure that genuine affection cannot survive. Because real love, the kind that lasts, requires space. It requires the freedom to give or not give, to stay or go without the relationship itself being held hostage. So the question becomes, how do you stop being desperate for love? How do you fill yourself so completely that you no longer need another person to validate your existence? And the answer is both simple and difficult. You must make peace with yourself, not in some shallow self-help sort of way, but in the deep sense of truly accepting your own being, every part of it. The parts you're proud of and the parts you hide. The successes and the failures, the beauty and the brokenness, all of it. This is not easy. Our entire culture is built around the idea that you should be constantly improving, constantly becoming something other than what you are, better, stronger, more successful, more attractive. And implicit in that message is the idea that who you are right now is not enough. But what if you are enough? What if you've always been enough? Not because you've achieved anything or earned anything, but simply because you're here because you exist. There's something that breathed you into being. Call it what you will. God, the universe, the great mystery, life itself. Whatever name you give it, it brought you forth without asking your permission, without demanding that you prove your worth first. You were loved into existence before you could do a single thing to deserve it. The sun rises on you every morning without checking your resume. The air fills your lungs without asking for payment. You're held by forces so vast and so generous that your very existence is proof of unconditional love. Now, if you can see this, if you can really let it sink in, something shifts. You begin to realize that you're not a beggar standing at the door of life hoping for scraps. You're already part of the feast. You're already held, already loved, already whole. And from that place of fullness, you can give love without strings attached. Not because you're trying to earn something, but because love is simply your nature. It's what overflows from you when you're not busy protecting yourself, not busy trying to get something. When two people meet from this place of fullness, something entirely different happens. There's no desperation, no grasping, no constant anxiety about whether the other person will stay or go. Instead, there's a kind of ease, a recognition. They don't need each other to be complete. So they're free to choose each other simply because they want to. And that choice made freely without coercion or need is worth more than 1,000 desperate commitments. This is the love that doesn't keep score. The love that doesn't turn cold when you fail to meet expectations. The love that sees you on your worst day and doesn't flinch because it was never based on your performance in the first place. It was based on the simple fact of your being, and your being cannot fail. It cannot disappoint. It simply is. But let me be honest with you, this kind of love is rare, not because it's difficult, but because most people never stop running long enough to find it. They're too busy searching outside themselves for something that can only be discovered within. They move from person to person, relationship to relationship, always shopping the next one will be different, always believing that if they just find the right person, everything will finally click into place. But it won't, because the problem was never finding the right person. The problem was being the wrong person. You cannot meet someone at a depth you haven't met yourself. If you've never sat quietly with your own thoughts, your own fears, your own pain, then you'll never truly sit with another's. If you've never forgiven yourself for being imperfect, you'll never forgive them either. If you've never learned to be alone without feeling empty, you'll turn every relationship into a life raft. And people can sense that. They can feel when they're being used to fill a void, and it's exhausting for them. So before you go looking for love, before you decide you need someone to complete you, try this. Sit with yourself, really sit with yourself. Not with distractions, not with screens or noise or busyness, but just you and your own presence. And notice what comes up. Notice the discomfort, the restlessness, the voice that says you should be doing something more important. And then notice that voice is not you. It's just a thought, a habit, a pattern you learned somewhere along the way. Underneath all that noise, there's a silence. And in that silence, there's a kind of peace. Not the peace of having everything figured out, but the peace of not needing to. The peace of simply being alive, breathing in and out, existing in this moment without requiring it to be anything other than what it is. When you touch that peace, even for a moment, something in you relaxes, and from that relaxation, love becomes possible. Not the grasping, needy kind, but the kind that gives without keeping track. The kind that stays or goes, based not on obligation, but on genuine care. And here's what's beautiful. When you find that peace in yourself, you start to recognize it in others. You can spot Theones, who are also drinking from their own well, who don't need you to fix them or complete them. And when two such people meet, it's not about rescuing each other. It's about two whole beings, choosing to walk alongside each other for a while, sharing what they have, learning from each other, growing together, but never losing themselves in the process. This is the great irony. The moment you stop needing love, you become capable of receiving it. The moment you stop chasing it, it finds you because you're no longer approaching people as a beggar, bold, outstretched, hoping they'll drop something into it. You're approaching them as someone who already has enough, who has something to offer, who can give freely because giving doesn't diminish you. And people respond to that. They're drawn to it because it's so rare to meet someone who isn't constantly taking, who isn't draining energy, who isn't using the relationship to fill some bottomless need. So if you want in love and be loved, start here. Stop trying to earn it. Stop trying to prove you deserve it. Stop performing and pretending and contorting yourself into shapes you think others want. Instead, turn inward. Make peace with the person you find there, not by fixing everything that's wrong, but by accepting that nothing needs fixing. You're not a project. You're not broken. You're not incomplete. You're a living, breathing expression of life itself. And that's enough. It's always been enough from that place. Love is not something you chase or something you earn. It's something you are. It flows from you naturally like light from the sun. And whether others return it or not becomes less important because you're not giving in order to get. You're giving because giving is your nature. And in that giving, you discover something remarkable. You discover that you were never empty in the first place. You were always full. You were always loved. You just forgot for a while. And when you remember, when you really see it, everything changes. You stop begging for crumbs and realize you're already at the feast. You stop searching for someone to complete you and realize you were never half a person to begin with. You stop trying to earn love and simply become it. And from that becoming, from that overflowing, you meet others, not as empty vessels hoping to be filled, but as rivers meeting rivers, each full from their own source, joining together not out of need, but out of the sheer joy of flowing together for a while. This is the love that doesn't fade when circumstances change. This is the love that doesn't turn bitter when expectations aren't met. This is the love that sees you at your absolute worst and doesn't turn away because it was never based on your best behavior. It was based on the recognition that beneath all the masks, all the roles, all the stories you tell yourself, you are the same life, the same consciousness, the same being that moves through everything and everyone. And how can life stop loving itself? So here's my invitation to you. Stop looking for love out there. Stop trying to become worthy of it. Stop performing and pretending. Instead, go inward. Meet yourself fully. Accept yourself completely. Not because you're perfect, but because perfection was never required. And from that acceptance, from that peace, watch what happens. Watch how love begins to flow from you without effort. Watch how the right people appear in your life, not to save you, but to dance with you. Watch how life itself begins to feel like the embrace you've been seeking all along. The love you want is not out there waiting to be found. It's right here in you, waiting to be recognized. And once you see it, once you really know it, you'll understand that you were never unloved, never alone, never incomplete. You were always held by something so vast, so generous, so utterly without conditions that you couldn't see it because you're looking for something smaller, something you could grasp and control. But real love cannot be grasped. It can only be surrendered to. And in that surrender, you discover that you are it. You always were and you always will.